Following the Paris attacks, French government leaders say Muslim religious leaders who preach radical views will be expelled and their mosques shut down. Muslims living in the small French town of i.s.i.l say they've always been under scrutiny and now they think it will only get worse. Mohammed Jamjoom reports.
A mournful gathering meant to showcase unity. But in i.s.i.l, a tiny town in southern France, even this small crowd had difficulty truly bridging their differences.
Not all Muslims are terrorists. Only a small group are fundamentalists. They want power. They want to flood the planet. But I do have a problem with migrants. They're like a Trojan horse, you know. Some of the migrants are trained and they have contacts to get weapons.
At the remembrance ceremony for the victims, attendees were somber for more than the obvious reasons. Many Muslims in the crowd had been worried about worsening attitudes toward them even before the horrific attacks in Paris. Now they say they're as scared as they are sad.
Every time someone looks at me in the street, I feel they think we are at fault. But we have nothing to do with what happened in Paris. We are heartbroken for those who are living this tragedy.
25-year-old Malik, who was born and grew up in i.s.i.l, tells me Islamophobia really began setting in last year. Once it was discovered that several young Muslim men from here hadn't just been radicalized, they'd also gone to wage war in Syria.
In
i.s.i.l, there are many young people from my generation who joined up to fight with terrorists. We don't understand why they did that, and we don't want to be associated with them. We want people to know we are, above all else, French.
Townsfolk are still at pains to comprehend how a community of less than 30,000 people and full of postcard views like these could have become a possible breeding ground for radicalization. But the growing confusion doesn't diminish the rising anger. With the French government's stated aim of both expelling radical imams and dissolving radical mosques, houses of worship like this one, the Al-Baraka Mosque, which had been under investigation even before the Charlie Hebdo attacks, will almost certainly come under even more scrutiny. 6 men who died fighting in Syria in 2014 had attended this mosque. Now, another 4 worshippers tell us they've been instructed by police not to leave i.s.i.l and to report to the local police station several times a day. It's why so many of the faithful here continue to pray for guidance, even though mosque officials are at a loss on how exactly to proceed.
I am concerned about how to follow our religion in i.s.i.l. It's not important who wins elections, the right or the left, we are all French.
But during these times of deepening polarization, many Muslims here wonder if that one commonality will ultimately continue to be enough to get them all through this. Mohammed Jamjoom, Al Jazeera, i.s.i.l, France.
Well, Francois Germain is a migration researcher at i.s.i.s in Paris and at the University of Liège in Belgium. He joins us now live from the Place de la République. Good to have you with us, Francois. I mean, let's talk about Syrian refugees. There's clearly going to be a backlash against them. People will be more suspicious of them. Do you think it's going to be a lot harder for them to find asylum in future?
Yes, obviously I'm very concerned about it, and there is an obvious risk of backlash against refugees, against immigrants, and against Muslim communities in general, and we need to understand that this is exactly what terrorists are looking for. Terrorists are trying to divide society, and what is really unbearable to terrorists is the idea that Muslim people would coexist together with Christians, Jews and atheists, and this that they're trying to destroy.
There are calls for increased screening of refugees. Do you think it's possible to give security guarantees and be totally certain that potential attackers aren't among them?
Well, I think that the terrorist attacks will happen anyway, and there's certainly, sadly, no shortage of workforces here in Europe and in France. So the reasons why they are trying to smuggle some terrorists against refugees, and this is a possibility, is only to accuse refugees and to trigger a backlash against refugees. So we should not fall into that trick, into that trap.
We know that France is stepping up its bombing of i.s.i.l targets in Syria and Iraq. Clearly, that's going to cause even more civilians to try and escape the bombing. So we're in this vicious circle where the very actions designed to attack i.s.i.l are leading to the creation of more refugees.
Yes, this is indeed a vicious circle, and obviously the military operations currently ongoing are likely to trigger more refugees, and if Europe doesn't want to take them in, then we'll have a serious humanitarian issues. But there is also a risk of vicious circle with the backlash against Muslim communities in France, because some young people might feel even more marginalized, excluded from the French society, which in turn could lead them to become jihadists and potential terrorists. So there is a very serious risk, and this is exactly what the terrorists are after.
Francois, thank you very much indeed for that. Francois Gimen speaking to us live from Paris there.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.